So welcome to episode 1 of Breaking Bethel. We're going to start going through this series. I'm really excited about it. I already have some other fellow alumni I'm talking to for down the road to start doing some other maybe interviews with other people that have left Bethel. And it's really cool the networking that's happening already. So if you have people that maybe have walked away from Bethel right off the bat, feel free to send them my way because we're talking. So episode 1 and the idea of Breaking Bethel is that we're going to go from application all the way to third year. I want to take it in phases, maybe 2 or 3, maybe 3 episodes per year. So we'll see how long this takes. We'll see the format. We'll see how things go, but it's going to take some time for me to iron this out. So this may evolve over the time, or it will evolve more than likely. And I'm excited to see what that turns into. This is something brand new for me. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay. So you want to go to Bethel, and the first step is you have to apply. When you apply to Bethel, it's not like a ministry school that you would typically go to or a college. The application process is a bit different. It starts off pretty standard, and we're probably going to go through, I'm looking at my notes, so sorry, I'm looking over here. And since basically you're going to vicariously live through going to Bethel through me, you got to start by vicariously applying to Bethel. So let's start with that. So it may seem strange to start with the application process, but there's a lot in there that ties into the theology and what Bethel does that's in the process. So I like to break down the application process into kind of 3 or 4 different things. The ones I've written down are the actual application. So this is like you're writing down the application of just standard information, the questionnaire part, the interview, and then the callback. So I went through all of my email accounts that I had at that time. I even had to go through some like old AOL email accounts, and I tried to find some sort of like remnants of the application or something, but I don't know if it's because they were so old they got deleted automatically, but I couldn't find anything, which is kind of a bummer. But that being said, this is back in 2008. So when you apply at Bethel, just keep in mind, like, this is 2008 Bethel. This isn't, Bethel now. So this is a while ago. So just that being the disclaimer, and I'm doing this from memory, but I feel pretty confident in my memory of everything. So just keep that all in mind. All right. So when you start off with the actual application part, it's just standard stuff, like asking for your age, why you want to come to Bethel, where are you from, what else we got here, location, church background's one of them, like what kind of church you attend, that kind of stuff. It's all pretty standard, nothing too crazy. This is just a basic application you're filling out. So that's like applying for a job, that's pretty straightforward. But then we get to the questionnaire part. And the questionnaire part is where things get pretty fun. I guess interesting, fun, whatever word you want to put in there. Now, when the questionnaire starts, it's stuff like, what kind of church do you attend, or what denomination are you? There's stuff like, how long have you been a Christian? That's a pretty straightforward one. When did you get saved? Do you have any known major sin issues? And you're like, oh gosh, like who's gonna actually fill that part out? But it's really interesting when they start getting these questions, because this is trying to find out if you're already immersed in the Bethel culture. Now, for me, I wasn't really immersed in the Bethel culture per se, because I didn't really know what the Bethel culture was. When I applied to Bethel, I actually never heard a Bill Johnson sermon. I never listened to Jesus culture or Bethel music or anything like that. I just went because I was told it was basically what my church was already doing, but like cooler and better and bigger, and they could teach me how to do it, even like more of it. I had dial-up internet, so I didn't have the best access to stuff. But I just kind of went off of like what my pastor, my parents were like, hey, it's they went down to Lakeland, and they connected with Bethel students while they're at Lakeland, and I was a level to see what Lakeland. They're like, yeah, there's a place in California where they do this all the time. I'm like, let's go there. I didn't really want to go to college, mainly because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and the bill for college was too much for me to swallow. So I went to Bethel. So that being said, they were trying to figure out what kind of church you go to, and I was like, yeah, my answer was like, yeah, I operate in the prophetic already, doing words of knowledge. I'm already looking for miracles, and like our church was teaching all that stuff, so I was going for it. I was already there. And then the question is like, why do you want to go to Bethel? And I'm just like, I want to see more of this stuff. I want to do more of this stuff. I want to raise the dead. Like that's always the big thing. And you want to see amazing miracles happen, and you want to get empowered and hopefully get trained to be on staff at a church at some point. And then the question that really, I guess, stuck out to me is when they talk about what does your personal relationship with God look like? And if you're watching this, you will know that I'm going to be having an interview with Doreen Virtue coming out, and we talk about. And I'm going to bring it full circle, and this is kind of part of the meat I want to get to with this. So when you're talking about the differences in theologies with charismatics and reformed and whatnot, this I think is one of the biggest things, is the idea of a personal, intimate relationship with Jesus or with God. And I think one of the questions Doreen asked me when she talked about ministering to Mormons, or not Mormons, charismatics, that it must be like the prophetic aspect must be the hardest part, like because they're entrenched in the prophetic and they believe in the prophetic, and that's something they're very passionate about. And I personally don't think that's what it was, because for me, the last really big theological cornerstone that I held on to with my time in the charismatic camp was the idea of my personal, intimate relationship with God, like this one-on-one intimacy, where it was I could hear God's voice directly. Like he talks to me every morning. Like in my daily walk, I can just kind of like that Kevin Copeland. You ever see that clip? I might try to add it in here. We'll see. Where he's like, "Oh yeah, okay, Father, yeah, I'll get that." Yep. It's like that kind of thing where it's like you're talking to God directly all the time. Like I seriously thought I had that. And that was when they ask you, what does your personal, intimate relationship with God look like? I want to be like, yeah, it's great. Like I talk with God all the time. I feel like I hear God's voice very clearly. I feel like I honor what he says all the time. And then you have like, you take that same idea with on the other side of things. Like I'm always curious. Like I've never really talked to many like Baptists or Lutherans or Calvinists of like, what does that look like to you? And that's just a question I never asked. And I would love to see what you guys think. Like what, if someone asked you, what does your personal, intimate relationship with God look like? How would you answer that? Like, I'm still working on that now of like, how would I answer that? Like for me, it's more of like, I see him as my savior. He's like the creator of the universe, like the Holy Spirit that convicts me. But it's not this like intimate level. And this is where the Mormonism comes in, because you'll notice that when you talk to charismatics about the gospel or or a testimony about the gospel, most of the conversation usually ends on the experience they've had with God. And they testify more to the presence they felt rather than the reality of the gospel that they've heard. And this is the exact same thing with Mormons, which is why I want to do a whole video really on paralleling the Mormons and the charismatics. Because the Mormons, they are taught whenever you're in a kind of discussion, and Jeff Durbin would see this. I gotta get Jeff Durbin because I've mentioned his name so many times. I gotta talk with him at some point. But his videos, it's great because he'll ask them, he'll kind of lead them down a series of questions of like, if someone were in sin, what would you point to? And like, oh, we point to the Bible. The Bible says not to do X, Y, and Z. He said, right, but if someone told you they believed in a different Jesus, how would you do it? And they talk about how they've had a burning in their bosom. They've prayed honestly, and they've read the Book of Mormon with good intentions and earnestly, and they've had a burning in their bosom, like they felt the presence that convicted them. Even though we all know the Jesus they believe is not the real Christ. They have a different Christ. And so it's the same idea with the charismatics, is they believe that this intimate personal relationship is confirmed by the presence that they feel, not by what's testified in the Bible. Now, I'm not saying all. I'm just saying in a lot of the experiences I've had, and from my time, it seems like most of the conversations have revolved around that, rather than talking about like the actual gospel. And that's hard. That really separates things. So Bethel asks you about this, and it sets up this theology of what Bethel has, and that's very much the theology that Bethel has. It's that intimate one-on-one relationship with God. So you're going through this questionnaire, and this is kind of that was, like I said, the part that I really thought was important to go through. So they're asking you about your personal relationship with God and all this intimate stuff. And it's like I said, this is like probably one of the biggest cornerstones when it comes to the theology with Bethel. Like this, I think, is one of the biggest things. So they're laying this groundwork for what is to be expected of you as a student already in the interview process. So once you get this all filled out and accepted, you've gone over your major sin issues. Like I said, I had my own sin issues I was dealing with, but I didn't talk about. I didn't disclose, my the sexual immorality and all that fun stuff that comes with it that I was dealing with, but I did not disclose it. It was just not at all in the application. I figured I didn't, I was a 17-year-old boy. I didn't really want to talk about that stuff, and I thought kept it under wraps. So at this point, what happens is once you get this all filled out and submitted, you wait for a phone call. It's either going to be email for a Skype or a phone call. I had bad internet, like I said, I had dial-up, so I actually got a phone call, my little Nokia Kyocera flip phone, and you speak with your revival group pastor, or who's going to be your revival group pastor. So the one that interviews you is who's going to be your RGP, or revival group pastor, and that's the person that's like your direct pastor over you at the school, because Chris and Bill can't pastor everyone, so that's who you kind of report to, basically. Holds you accountable and is effectively your pastor. So they call you and you set up a conversation with them, and it starts off pretty simple, like basic standard pleasantries. The phone call lasts between like 30 and an hour. I've heard some go for 2 hours. It really depends, I guess, on your interview. But at this point, they are interviewing you, and they're reviewing your questions. Going over why you want to be at Bethel. What office do you think you hold? Like, are you an apostle? Are you a prophet? What do you feel like where you fit in? What gifts do you bring? Why do you want to come to Bethel? And they really just want to get a feel for you. They pray with you. They ask some hard-hitting questions sometimes, again, about the sin issues. And I'm like, nope, clean as a whistle. I'm all good. And you go over that stuff. And, mine wasn't super intense, partially because I was masking a lot of stuff. I wasn't being super honest. So I kind of blazed right through, which you would think that would discredit me from getting in, but it didn't. So after that point, the revival group pastor will end the phone call with, I'm going to pray about this and I'll get back to you. And that little, I'm going to pray about this thing is probably one of the biggest theological nuggets they drop on you, because they want to make sure that if you're coming, that God has told them that you should come, that you are supposed to be here. And it puts a lot of weight on that phone call of like, man, God's going to tell them whether I should come or not. And as someone who lied on the application, I'm like, I'm not getting it. I seriously thought because I was dishonest about that the man of God would know, the prophet would know, and I wouldn't get in. And so a week or so goes by, and you get the phone call, and he tells me I'm in. And I'm freaking out. The man of God calls me and tells me that he heard God's voice, basically. He confirms that he prayed about it, and I feel like God's telling him that I should come. And I'm flipping out. I'm so excited. This is everything I wanted. I'm going to go. I'm going to be a part of it, But then in the back of my mind, you would think it'd be a red flag of but wait a minute, what about the major sin issue? What about that? Did they not know? Do they know? Is it something that just they know now and they're not going to talk about it? Or they're how's that work? Because if God told you I'm supposed to go, he told you I'm good and clean and ready to go, is he not caring about the sin issue? It right away, I just remember this wave of confusion of well, what does that mean about this? Is this not a big issue then? If it didn't get called out in your prophecy or in your words of knowledge from God, it just leaves you with a lot of questions. And so, but there's kind of a confirmation bias there, because you want it to work. You're hey, I got in. So you're going to roll more with the confirmation bias side of things, and rather than worry about it. And it goes in line with Bethel's form of prophecy, which is prophecies for encouragement. Call it the golden people, and, tell me I'm an adulterer, crazy little teenage kid that needs to rein it in, is not really calling out the gold, is it? So maybe that's why I didn't say, I don't know, but it definitely left me some questions. But I was more leaning on the confirmation bias things, and I'm good to go. So you gather the funds. I think first year was $3,500. Second year was $25, I think, I forget, but And the other thing too is that like with the sin issue, and I should remember this. They're like they have to clear you to graduate. You don't just graduate based off of merit. There's like this prayer session they have about graduating. But I mention that because there are people in first year that actually did first year the year prior, but they didn't get graduated, so they had to do first year again and reapply, and then pay like $1,800 rather than the full $3,500. So they did first year twice. Like that was terrifying too. The idea you wouldn't graduate at that point. So, but now you're accepted. Congratulations, you're in Bethel. Now you are actually get your first homework assignment, which is you have to read When Heaven Invades Earth. It's required that you finish that before the first day of school. And there's also like a book report homework assignment that comes with it. And so you get that, you start networking, finding a place to stay, because Bethel doesn't have their own dormitories, so you got to find a place to stay, room and board. I worked part-time, that kind of fun stuff. But you do all that, and then basically you're getting ready to go. Some people go early, some people go before school. It all depends, but at that point you're off to the races and you're going to Bethel, and it's crazy. You're excited, and it was for me too. I was definitely very excited. There's a lot of just overall just anxiousness there, but the big thing, like I said, was just like that there's a lot of red flags and questions I should have been aware of with how they didn't pick up on that, and you think they would have, but yeah, I mean that's it. That's your application process for Bethel. I hope this has been good for you guys. I hope you enjoy this. I hope you like this. If you want more of this, let me know. It's a little bit of work cutting this together, so if you want more of it, I need to know you want more of it. I have the interview coming up with Doreen Virtue. That's going to be in January. So we've already filmed that, and that's exciting. So Doreen, if you're watching this, hi. I love the conversation. That was wonderful. And hopefully more stuff to come. But if you like this, let me know. And if you have people in Bethel, share it with them. If you have people that are coming out of Bethel, like I said, we're going to have some interviews with some alumni probably coming up. And we can kind of reminisce of some of our old experiences and what we went through. But it's really cool, the networking that's already happening. So I hope you guys have a Merry Christmas. I hope this is a good enough present for you. I hope you enjoy it. And thank you so much for taking time to listen. And yeah, Merry Christmas. God bless.